from Naval, Ravikant. He said, I don't care how rich you are or how big your salary is. If someone has to tell you what to wear, if someone has to tell you where to work and for how long and what to do, then I don't care, because you're basically a slave. That true freedom is the ability to do what you want, however you want it, and for how long you want to do it. The most brutal things and the most damaging things are the things that not only that you didn't anticipate, but also things that you didn't even imagine that's going to happen. You have to look at it. What if my job fails? What if tomorrow the company that I'm working for closes? What if tomorrow the company and the job that I'm doing becomes obsolete? How can I protect myself from that? That's why when you have a job, even if your boss is like really bad and really shouts at you, really disrespects you, even if your employees really disrespects you, even if your coworkers really disrespects you, I mean, they put up with it, right? Even though it's wrong and they know that it's wrong, they put up with it because it's a single point of failure. By having single points of failure, by having so many things be reliant on just one thing, then you are basically a slave to that one thing. If you can think in systems, then that means you understand how it operates. And that means you know and understand how it works. When you know and understand how it works, then that simplifies all the things that's surrounding it. And that's what the system really is. It serves as a framework, and so that if something happens, you know how to respond. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 28 of the Clarity Project podcast. I am your host, Carl Umali. For today's episode, we're going to do things a little bit differently because we are shooting this episode inside rather than outside, as opposed to other episodes that we have done in the past. So I'm doing this because I have a little bit of spare time on my hand, and we currently do not have any internet. And so through boredom and through the situation, I felt like doing an episode tonight, and I felt like this is just like an opportunity for me to be able to produce the very first episode for this year, 2025. That being said, let's get to it. And let me read the note from my notebook. So here is my notebook. You're already familiar with this. We talked about this notebook in episode number 27. I shared to you just a little bit of a recap. I shared to you the content, the very first notes that I had in this notebook. This notebook is already finished. I started in somewhere in 2022, if I remember it correctly, and I ended it on last year on November 2024. And I have a new notebook now, albeit I haven't been writing a lot on it, but I'll make sure to write a lot of stuff in it. So the problem with this notebook, with this new notebook, let me just share it with you guys. Let me get it real quick. So this is the new notebook that I'm talking about. So as you can see, there's like a lot of pages here, and it's in blue, so I can easily find it whenever it gets lost or something. All of my notebooks, by the way, I try to pick out my notebook where they don't have any lines on them. And the reason for that is because I like to doodle like a lot. Even in school, when I was still in school, I like to doodle in all of my notebooks. That is not a Carl notebook if it doesn't have a doodle in it. As you can see here, it's already broken, right? I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so it's already coming apart, and that's because it's too big. And that's also a testament to the quality of this. So I bought this around 400-ish pesos online, and it's good, it's nice, because this could easily be a drawing notebook, and it has a lot of pages, right? I don't know how many pages is that, but that's around 500 or so pages, and so it's really thick, as you can see, but it's falling apart already. And I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to get someone to fix it. I haven't done that yet, so that's why I haven't been writing on that notebook. But basically, this is the old notebook. We're just gonna go through everything in this notebook, and we are currently already at October 3, 2023, if you could see the date in this notebook. And in the future, we're just gonna go through every note in here that I think is relevant, that I think is important, that I think can help you guys. And so, yeah, I'm really just excited. I mean, it will be just a surreal feeling once I switch to this. Because if I switch to this notebook for every podcast episode, then that means we've already finished this old notebook. So, yeah, enough with chit chat. I'm going to get right to it. So, this is the notebook that we're going to talk about today. And this is the note that we're going to talk about today. So, this is from October 3, 2023. It is from 11:13 a.m., so it's almost noon. And let me read the first paragraph to you guys. And this is a little bit short and it's a little bit vague. I don't know why I write like this, but sometimes when you're in the spur of the moment, you just write what you can. And so here it goes. The ability to do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want. And then open and close parentheses, it says how you want, meaning that it's basically on how you want to do things. Let me repeat that. The ability to do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want, meaning how you want to do it. So, what does this talk about? So, it talks about our freedom. It talks about our freedom in terms of doing the things that we want, and freedom in the terms of not only doing the things that we want, but how we want to do it and for how long we want to do it. So, it talks about and it speaks to the fundamental truth that not every person has the liberty to experience this. Not every person has the liberty to have the choice to be able to do this. And from their own volition and from their own capacity, to be able to do what they want, how they want to do it, and for how long they want to do it. The human psyche and the human condition and how it operates is very limited in terms of resources and how we could do the things that we want. Of course, as kids, we don't see this. As kids, we want to do things, but we are not that limited in a sense that we are aware of the things that we can't do as adults rather than as kids. Before, it is all just about our household on what our parents would let us do. But as we grow older, the more that leash is vanished or is removed from our childhood, the more freedom and the more liberty that we have as individuals, the more that it is apparent that certain leash and certain restrictions still happen and still occurs, albeit this time not from our parents, but from our situation, maybe from our government, maybe from the way that we live and the socioeconomic background that we currently live in. So, in doing this, this reminds me of a idea from Naval Ravikant also. He said, I don't care how rich you are or how big your salary is. If someone has to tell you what to wear, if someone has to tell you where to work and for how long and what to do, then I don't care because you're basically a slave. Because becoming free is really not something to be taken lightly of. Being free and true freedom really is the ability to do something, to do anything that you want. Of course, not in the sense that you could do anything that you want, including evil things without consequences. This is doing whatever that you want in the context of your passion, in the context of your leisure, in the context of what it is truly inside of your heart that is also benevolent to others. And so we have to realize that not every one of us has the liberty to be able to do whatever it is that we want to do in life because we are restricted, maybe from our financials. We are restricted maybe because of our situation. Maybe we can't go to another city. Maybe we can't go to another country. Maybe we can't go to another field, another job. So all of these things contribute to our own freedom. And I guess what this passage really does is a reminder that true freedom is the ability to do what you want, however you want it, and for how long you want to do it. Because no matter how big the price tag is, no matter how big your salary is, no matter how big you're being compensated for something, if at the end of the day, you don't really want to do it. If at the end of the day there's someone like a boss that's going to tell you that you should wear this, that you should be here at this exact time, and you should leave here at this exact time, and all of these things you have to do in a certain manner, in a certain way, all of this just contributes to how limited your freedom is. And so, as an end goal, based on this passage, as an end goal, you really want to live your life in a way that no one gets to tell you what to do, what to wear, how to do it, and for how long you want to do it. The end goal and the aspirational goal is to be able to have the freedom, true freedom, in being able to say no because you truly don't want it, right? Not because, not being able to say yes just because someone told you to do so and that you can't say no to. No, it's freedom in terms of living the way that you truly want to live. That's true freedom. And I guess I don't need to expand further. I think the lesson is already clear cut. And so let me move forward to the next passage. So the next passage is this. It says, you can plan for everything. You can plan for every risk, except for the things too crazy to cross your mind. And those crazy things do the most harm because they happen more often than you think. You can't prepare for you can't imagine or envision. Let me repeat that. You can plan for every risk except for the things too crazy to cross your mind. And those crazy things do the most harm because they happen more often than you think. You can't prepare for something that you can't imagine or you can't envision. So I think if I have an idea, I didn't put where it was from, but I got an idea on a hunch on how where I got this from. So at around this time, October 3, 2023, I was, where was I? Was this already past college? Yeah, I believe so. So I was reading Nassim Taleb's book Antifragile, and from based on what I remember, this resonates with the ideas in that book. So it says that, I guess this is for people that want to plan things, and it's not to throw shade at people who always plan things. This is just a reminder to, no matter how much we plan things out, it's only as good as our imagination. It's only as good as our intuitiveness to be able to foresee the future in a way, right? It's only as good as how clear we can see the future. So to simplify, we could plan all the way that we want. And sometimes the things that happen that are completely out of our control, things that we truly never imagined, those things make the most damage. And if you're someone who plans your life, or if you're someone who doesn't even plan your life, it's the same thing. The most brutal things and the most damaging things are the things that not only that you didn't anticipate, but also things that you didn't even imagine that's going to happen. If you're going to take a step back in history, 5 years ago, the pandemic, right? The COVID-19 pandemic, no one anticipated that's going to happen. If you told someone in 2018 that there's going to be a global pandemic, that the whole world would basically shut down and every businesses would cease operations and everybody would be in their homes, that's kind of like out of a dystopian novel. No one would believe you. And yet it happened. And so these things, those things that are really destructive, those things that are really damaging, are the things that you wouldn't even imagine that's going to happen. And so how can we learn from this lesson? How can we learn as someone who wants to, even if you don't want to plan out your life, but in the terms of someone who just wants a little bit of an idea on how they should go about their life? So if we're going to try and think about our future in a practical sense, if you're a student, you're maybe thinking about what college you want to get into, what course or what program you want to get into, what school you want to get into. If you're a young adult and you're early in your career, you might want to think about what career path should I go in, what kind of company should I go in, and what city should I work in. So all of these things are contributing factor, and those are the obvious, right? When we think about these things, when we think about the future, there are certain attributes, there's certain parameters, and there's certain areas that we could already like think about in the future, just in case. So it could be about, oh, how far the travel is from my hometown all the way to my office, to my workplace. How is this going to affect my career 3 to 5 years from now? uh, how good is it in terms of the quality that I'm getting, in terms of the benefits? How good is it in terms of the quality that I'm getting in terms of education? Are the professors good? Are the bosses good? Is there a great compensation program? All of these things you factor in with the future in mind. But those are the basics. Those are the starter packs. Now, this invites us to be able to think about the future in an expanded way, an expanded method, wherein we're not just going to think about the immediate attributes, the immediate things that we should think about, but rather we should expand our mind and to thinking outside of the box and to thinking the factors that is so crazy to think about, that what if this happens? This is not about being delusional. This is not about being so pessimistic. This is not about being kind of a like a conspiracy theorist. But this is just in a way that what if this happens? Will it still work? Right? You have to put yourself in that kind of a situation. What if this happened? Will it still work? And if this happens, what should I do? All of a sudden, the decision making process, which is already hard enough, becomes immensely difficult. It's almost impossible because if we are going to try and put imagination to the test, if we're trying to think about what's the worst case scenario, right? Let's start from that preface. If we're going to start from that, what's the worst case scenario? All of a sudden, this puts us in tons of pressure. This puts us in a way that might be difficult for us to be able to see clearly on what's going to happen. Now, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing to imagine these things is entirely up to what actually happens, which is we don't know about it. And so, I guess this passage isn't about trying to predict what's going to happen in the future because that's impossible, but it's about knowing and anticipating that things could go wrong. And I think there's a secondary or corollary paragraph, supplementary paragraph that goes beyond that. And let me read the next paragraph for you guys. So it says, avoid single points of failure. Everything that can break will eventually fail. If several things rely on one thing and that one thing breaks, you are doomed. Let me repeat that. Avoid single points of failure. Everything that will break will eventually break or fail. If several things rely on one thing and that one thing breaks, you are doomed. In money, this is the sole reliance on a paycheck. And so if you don't have enough savings and you don't have any avenues to income streams, then you are doomed. And so this is exactly what I try to do with the kinds of things that I'm engaged in. I try to expand my options, and so that when one fails, then I would have a backup. I would have something to rely on. I would have something to get from. So there's this maxim in investment, and it's called don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And basically what that means is that you should diversify. You should be able to expand and go to other ventures and to other fields and to other stocks, and so that if one segment of the stock fails, then you would have a backup and you're not really affected, right? Avoid single points of failure. And so if you're going to try and put this in terms of the monetary things, in terms of your job or your career, you have to look at it. What if my job fails? What if tomorrow the company that I'm working for closes? What if tomorrow the company and the job that I'm doing becomes obsolete? What happens then, right? How can I protect myself from that? And so, yes, you could say that, oh, I just jump company. I would just probably change companies. Maybe I would go into another place. Maybe I would go into another city. But that's simple thinking. What if something unimaginable happens, like your whole industry gets affected? If we're gonna go back to the COVID-19 situation, what if you are working in the hospitality industry? What happens then? And what if you are in the airline industry? And so every travel restrictions is going to be put on every airline. And so it's not as easy as jumping from one airline to the next. It's not as easy as jumping from one restaurant or one hotel to the next. All of a sudden, everything from your industry is disrupted. Everything in your industry is now affected negatively. If 100% of your income only comes from one thing, then if that thing fails, you are doomed. And so you want to expand the avenues on where you can get your income, meaning you should have multiple income stream. Now there's a great debate about this with financial gurus and YouTube people saying that you should not diversify. You don't need 7 different income streams. You just need one and you should focus on it. While that is true for most businesses and for most cases, I think that I should not actually give you any advice on that. This is not financial advice, spoiler alert, and quick disclaimer, this is not financial advice of any sort. But the way that I look at it is that yes, you should focus on one thing and so that you become good at it in terms of mastery, but you should also have several backups, plan Bs, plan Cs, emergency funds, or whatever. And so that if those things fail, then you could transition and you're not going to be fully affected because leaving all of that risk into one thing, betting all for that one thing is truly, truly risky. So you want to avoid single points of failure. And this is not just as easy in terms of things outside of your control, like the market crashes and if your company goes bankrupt the next day. This is not just about that. This is also about something personal. So if you would put in the systems in your life, if you're trying to think about the systems that is currently in your life, the things that is managing you, how you manage yourself, how you work out, how you eat, how you diet, how you learn, how you educate yourself, how you upskill. All of these things could be factored out in terms of single points of failure. If you're a business owner, there are systems in your business. And so you have to look at the systems in your business and the systems in your current daily life. And you want to look at it in terms of what is something in this business, in my business, and in my life, that if that fails, then everything else is affected. Let's just say, for example, you sell vegetables, produce. And what happens is you have one supplier. And that one supplier is giving you the best deal ever. And that's why you only have one supplier. But what happens if that one supplier fails to give you, or that one supplier fails to give you things anymore because they go bankrupt or there's a bad harvest? Then all of a sudden, you don't have any contact where you could get your produce from. And so what this really does is that you have to expand your horizons, you have to expand your options, and so that even if your number one source goes bad, then you would still have plan Bs. When it comes to school, if you have like an upcoming group project coming up and everything falls or relies on just a single person and it's supposed to be a presentation of some sort, what happens if that person becomes ill on presentation day and could not continue or could not present? What happens next? Then all of a sudden, every person in that group, including that person who went ill, is doomed. So you never want to let just one thing or one person have all of the responsibility for several things. You want to even it out, and so that risk is shared rather than one person or one thing is getting all of the risks. And this is also why a lot of people get strapped, because they are operating on single points of failure. They're operating in a job or in a career where it's a single point of failure. That's why when you have a job, even if your boss is like really bad and really shouts at you, really disrespects you, even if your employees really disrespects you, even if your coworkers really disrespects you, I mean, they put up with it, right? Even though it's wrong and they know that it's wrong, they put up with it because it's a single point of failure. They have no option left. And if they don't put up with it, then it's the end of their income stream. It's the end of their career. So I guess remembering the previous passage that we talked about in terms of freedom, this limits your freedom a lot. By having single points of failure, by having so many things be reliant on just one thing, then you are basically a slave to that one thing. So if that one thing says that, oh, you have to do this even though you don't want to, oh, you have to work for overtime on this, even though they said that the last time that you went into overtime for the sixth time that it's going to be the final thing, but now they're saying that no, 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 I said that that's the final thing, but this is the final thing, right? This is the new final thing. And then it just goes on and on and on. And before you know it, you're just so abused, you're so tired, and you really don't have energy for something else. And so your life is compromised in that way. So a great thing to think about for reflection is I want you to think about the things that are currently happening in your life, the systems that are in place in your life, and how many things are reliant on just one thing, right? You want to be able to think about those things. You want to be able to reflect on that. Like in my business, in my job, in my career, and even me as a student, how many of these things are reliant on one thing? And if that one thing fails, then everything is doomed. You want to limit that. You want to be able to eliminate that best case scenario. So think about all of these things that's currently happening in your life. Maybe it's in your terms of your health. If you compromise your health, then everything else follows. If you compromise your fitness, then everything else follows. So all of these things, you have to look at it from that perspective. You want to be able to eliminate the things where it could truly jeopardize you. Long story short, you don't want to rely for everything on just one thing, or you don't want to rely most of the things that's happening in your life for just one thing. That being said, let me read a final passage, which is this goes a little bit back from what we've talked about. Let me just try and find it. So it's this one with the doodle and sword. By working with a system, your mental energies are not that overused. It's easier to refine, think, and grow. This takes a lot of time for you to do something else that you want to do. Let me repeat that. By working with a system, your mental energies are not that overused. It's easier to refine, it's easier for you to think, and it's easier for you to grow. So this makes you have more time to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do. And it seems simple, right? The message here is super simple. It's just about telling you about the importance of having a system in place in your life. And of course, I'm not really the kind of person that has like a lot of systems going on around in the background. No, I'm not that kind of a guy because I feel like at the end of the day, if you tie yourself to a system, then that also eliminates your freedom in a way, right? Because you want to be able to live as freely as possible. But for me, systems serve as a guidelines. If you have systems in place, not something that as an absolute in your life, but something as a guideline, meaning it serves to where you could have the clarity to be able to do the things that you should be doing. It serves to have the clarity to be able to make sure that you are in line with what you want to do, in line with your goals and where you want to go. So all of these things contribute to your endpoint, to your destination that you want, your goals. And so for me, this passage just talks about what the system really does and what it makes you do. For me, it's a way for you to simplify everything, right? If you could think about If you can think in systems, then that means you understand how it operates. And that means you know and understand how it works. When you know and understand how it works, then that simplifies all of the things that's surrounding it. May that be in terms of the things that is contributing to it, or the things that are not contributing to it, or the things that are actually bad for it, and the things that are actually good for it. All of these things factor out in terms of the system. And that's what the system really is. It serves as a framework, and so that if something happens, you know how to respond. And so it says here, right? If you're operating on a system, your mental energies are not that overused. Here's what happens if you don't understand something and you're in a situation and when there's a problem that comes up. You have to think about it so much because it's the first time that you think about it. It's the first time and you don't have parameters, you don't have guidelines set up. And so that when these things happen, you know what to do. So what's going to happen is that every time there's a problem, every time there's a predicament, you're going to overuse your mental faculties in order to solve those problems. You're going to start from zero and from scratch every time something happens. Now, here's the thing. If you have a systems in place, this simplifies the process because, oh, if X happens, then we have to do Y. If Y happens, we have to do X. All of a sudden, there's a framework involved. All of a sudden, there's a system involved, for the lack of a better term. I know it's repetitive, but that's what it's trying to tell us. It says here, it's easier to refine, it's easier to think, and it's easier to grow. When you are a business owner, if you're a student who's trying to learn and trying to memorize as much as you can and trying to learn as much as you can, as trying to understand as much as you can, all of these things factor out in terms of the systems, whether that system is definite or not. Because at the end of the day, we all operate on a system, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we are conscious of it or not, whether it's deliberate or not. All of these things happen in the background. And so if you have a system in place, and the kind of systems that you have are the systems that you really thought out of, the systems that you really think through, systems that you have in terms of being prepared and knowing what to do when X happens. These things simplify decision making. It simplifies what you're going to do if it doesn't happen or if it does happen. So you will be able to see the system. Oh, there's a bottleneck here. Oh, there's a step in the system where it needs tweaking, right? It could be refined a little bit, and so that it's much more efficient. Oh, there's something in the system that we don't need anymore. We can remove that. It's redundant. Oh, there's this thing in the system that we should include, and so that these things, other parts of the system, other parts of the process gets improved and becomes much more efficient, much more effective. And so if you have a system in place, each and every of these factors you will see at a glance. You will see from a higher point of view as compared to when you don't have a system. All of a sudden, you can refine it, you can tweak it, and so that it becomes a system that improves over time rather than blindly doing things and hoping for the best. And so if you have systems in place, when new contributing factors happen, when new inputs go in, what's going to happen is just you're going to adjust it, right? You're just going to adjust it rather than when every new thing happens, you're in panic mode. When every new things happen, you are stressed about it because it's new, right? You have to rethink everything again. You have to reorganize everything again. As opposed to when you have a system, it's just a matter of tweaking. It's just a matter of refinement. It's just a matter of how you can integrate it with the system that you already have. So, yeah, I guess that's it for this episode. And if you watch this video as a whole or you watch it in snippets, I'd like to be able to thank you, and I'll see you again on the next one. And oh, by the way, if you like this, then follow for more. Thank you and bye-bye. Subscribe too.